Good morning and happy Sunday, and welcome to Unity of Kern County on this 12th day of July 2020. I'm Reverend Chuck, and we continue our spiritual journey with our spiritual 12 powers of faith and love, strength and judgment, power, imagination, understanding, will, order, enthusiasm, release, and of course, life. And like I've said before, if you have any questions about any of these discussion topics that we have about the powers, please message me on Facebook, or you can email me at revchuckunity@yahoo.com. And as we do each Sunday, we begin with acknowledging the presence of God in our life through I Am Now in the Presence, a Pure Being Prayer by Charles Fillmore. So I'm now in the presence of pure being, and immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. I acknowledge your presence and power, O blessed Spirit. In your divine wisdom, now erase my mortal limitations, and from your pure substance of love, bring into manifestation my world according to your perfect law. And so it is. Amen. Well, today we're looking at our spiritual power of understanding. This power is represented by the disciple Thomas. And as the story goes, he didn't believe, or he definitely didn't understand about the resurrection of Jesus until he showed up in the upper room, showed him his hands, and then he believed. He understood. And from that, we get this old adage called the doubting Thomas. Now, I've said this before in many of the lessons, that we all have the Christ presence within us. And of course, that presence encompasses the 12 powers that we are discussing during this series. Metaphorically, though, each one of those 12 disciples and the spiritual power they represent can be expressed in our lives, hopefully through spirit-directed Christ-centeredness. Otherwise, if it's directed by ego, we run into problems. Who of us have not had the doubting Thomas come out in our own lives when we're faced with something that we did not understand or challenged our belief system? Where does our ability to understand come from? Well, the 17th century French philosopher René Cardon, in his 1637 Discourse on Method, believed it came from our ability to think, to be consciously aware of our surroundings, of our world, of one's thoughts, thus having a total conscious awareness that we exist. Now, we've all heard the old quote, "I think, therefore I am." Well, Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, also had something to say about "I think, therefore I am" as far as it relates to consciousness. And I quote, "Consciousness is the sense of awareness, of knowing. It is our knowing that we know. The ideas that we held in mind are the basis of all consciousness. Consciousness is the knowledge or realization of any ideas, object, or condition. It is the sum total of all ideas accumulated in and affecting mankind's present being. It is the composite of ideas and thoughts, emotions and sensations, and of course, knowledge that makes up the conscious, subconscious, and supersubconscious minds. It includes all of man's awareness in and of spirit, soul, and body. The harmonious working together of these three is necessary to bring forth of the latent possibilities that we all possess. For mankind has 12 great centers of consciousness, the 12 great spiritual powers that are to be expressed and developed under the guidance of our Christ-centered spiritualness. Therefore, our power to understand, to comprehend, and to know works in harmony with our ability to use wisdom through spiritual discernment. There are two ways of getting understanding, he writes. One, of course, is by following Spirit, the Spirit that dwells within us all at our Christ center. And of course, the other is to allow ego to lead us blindly ahead, so that we have to learn life's lessons through the hard experiences of pain and suffering. Now, I don't know about you, but I did a lot of that in my younger years. And when I forget, and sometimes we all do, I forget that Christ is just within me and all I need to do is go within and do it. Once I make that realization, I stop and I put ego behind me. Get behind me, ego, and use my power of discernment. And that's something that we all can do. So, how do we keep ego from leading us into those hard experiences of life? Well, we do so by learning to trust that we have the ability to think and spiritually discern all information that we do not understand, especially if it goes a belief system that is based upon ego's need to control us, an ego that edges God out. And of course, we also need to trust. And that trust starts by understanding what our relationship is with God and the spiritual connection we have with God through our Christ Center. As Jesus taught time and time again, we are God's beloved children, heir to the kingdom and all that is good. And that kingdom we call heaven is right here, right now. For it was recorded in Luke that Jesus said, "For the kingdom of heaven is in the midst of you." And once we acknowledge that, then we need to understand that our basic nature is spirit and spiritual. Because we're made in the image and likeness of God. We carry that seed of God mind, that seed of God's spiritual DNA. That makes us divine beings. That makes us sons and daughters of the Most High. And this just didn't come out of the blue. The Old Testament writers acknowledged that in Psalms 82:6. "I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High." And then Jesus referred to it again in John 10:34 when he answered them, "Is it not written in your law, I have said, you are gods?" See, we've forgotten that truth that would set us free, the truth that Jesus tried to taught and teach and convince people that they were related to God, that God loved them beyond all reasonable doubt, called unconditional love, didn't judge, didn't condemn. He brought a new way of thinking, a new way of understanding spiritually how to connect with the Lord of their being. So, what does it mean for us when it comes to using our power of understanding in this day and age? It means that we must use our spiritual discernment in order to understand that we are born in the love of God mind, and that the seed of love is our divine nature of good. Who of us can look or hold at a newborn baby and call it bad or evil? Definitely not me. I've never been able to by that. Never, ever. Because to do so, in my mind, is to say God's seed, God's DNA, God's image and likeness is bad and evil. Can you say that? And say it with conviction? It's got to go against everything God is. The 14th century Dominican theologian and mystic Meister Eckhart said, "The seed of God is within us all. And within that God seed, we have all that we need to create a heaven here on earth through our power of understanding." In other words, there is a pattern for our spiritual growth that we can use to know that we are children of God, endowed with spiritual powers through our Christ Center. And yet, we know and we see, and we are a part of, because we share this world with everyone, for many people, that concept of understanding God as our beloved Father and we, the beloved children, is foreign to them. They see the world through ego's eyes instead of spirit. And therefore they're led to believe that humanity's nature is one based on evil and sin. They believe that people are born and that they are the spawn of the devil and therefore must be controlled through threats and forced chastisements and punishments, and of course rewards. This, my friends, is a total misunderstanding of the basic seed of God in all humanity. It is the choice to let ego lead and control their misunderstanding of their basic nature that creates the evil and sin that causes the pain and suffering that they experience. For whatever reason, they may never understand the spiritual message that Jesus gave to us, a message to help us understand our true divine nature with God. And as we know, Jesus taught using metaphors and precepts and parables. And one of those metaphors is found in John 15:5, and it states, "I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing." Well, we're going to look at that. And there are 5 little items in there that I'm going to share with you, using spiritual discernment to find the message within that message. And here they are. Number 1, Jesus, referring to himself as the vine, is the Christ presence in us. It is that Christ presence, your hope of glory, that Paul taught. Believe it? 2, when he refers to us as branches, that means that we're connected and that Christ's life force flows through us, just as the life force throws through that vine to all its branches. We have the same movement within us. 3, if you remain in me and I in you, refers to staying connected to the Christ presence within us. And as long as we do, we will be nourished. 4, the "you will bear much fruit" means that if we stay connected and nourished through our Christ center, we will bear the fruits of love and peace, order, harmony, abundance through the use of our 12 spiritual powers. And 5, then he added, "Apart from me, you can do nothing." This is basically a reminder that when we follow ego's lead and we ignore our Christ center, our spiritual nourishment will stop and we cease to bear no good fruit. Choice is ours to allow ourselves to be moved and embraced by that Christ center in all that we do, all that we say, all that we are, or to continue to allow ego to have its way, to control our minds, to dictate to us what we should and should not do, to edge God out. Now, we've all heard the statement, "I don't understand how God could let this happen." Well, what I've learned through many years of teaching principles, spiritual principles, and understanding what God's will for us is, I have found that many people have forgotten that God didn't cause it in the first place. We forgot that Jesus taught, "It is our Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom," right here and right now. That God is not responsible for our pain and suffering. It is just our understanding about that pain and suffering is a misunderstanding and a misbelief. Because we are good, we are heirs to the kingdom. We just need to put ego behind us and tell ego no more. And we can do that by using our spiritual discernment through our Christ center to get that understanding that we need at any given time in our lives and affairs. I'd like to share a story about a fellow Unity minister, Louise Beatty, and she was at the Unity Church of St. Petersburg, Florida for many, many years. And I kind of laugh when I hear this because it is, in fact, so true. When Louise was younger, she had been given up by doctors as a hopeless cripple who would never walk. Through faith, she found healing, but still limped. As a Unity minister, she taught classes on healing, and some of the people, ego here, questioned her right to teach healing because she still limped. So this is what she'd do. She'd remind these people of their misunderstanding about God and our divine nature by explaining that Jesus still had the nail prints in his hands when he met Thomas, thus satisfying any doubt that Thomas may have had to his resurrection. So she would say to those, "My limp is my nail print. My limp is my nail print." I love it. Boy, I tell you, when you allow Spirit to come through, this is how it happens. This is how you're able to use spiritual discourse and discernment to not challenge anybody, but to let people know where you stand in a spiritual foundation, that it is based on spirit and not ego. Now, of course, stuff happens that we can't explain. But to blame God is a total misunderstanding of our spiritual power of understanding. And it doesn't help when insurance companies put in their policies a thing called an act of God, as if to say that what this disaster that is befalling you pissed God off, so you just got punished. Now, Jesus, in all his lessons, never once blamed God for anything. He blessed, he gave thanks, he taught forgiveness and compassion, and an understanding that God only wants us to be happy, healthy, and abundantly blessed. It is up to us to use our spiritual power of understanding to find the truth within us through our Christ Center. The truth that Jesus talked about when he said, "You will know that truth, and the truth will set you free." Free from a controlled by ego mind, that mindset that keeps you in bondage to pain and suffering. It is only through using your power of spiritual discernment can you come to understand that we are able to come into a full realization and a full expression of our divine nature and the connection that we have to our vine, which is the Christ within. So the next time you say, "I don't understand why that or this happened," tell ego to get behind you and go within to your Christ Center. Ask for spiritual discernment of that situation or circumstance, and ask for divine guidance to show you the truth. And so join me next week, dear friends, as we look at our spiritual power of will, and we understand what God's will really is for all of us. So I want to thank you all for following me on Facebook or YouTube, and for your financial support that keeps this ministry active. And until next Sunday, have a great week. Remember to be good to yourself and others. God bless you, dear friends.